The following is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated. Well, there were many watching the game on Sunday, and they were saying the things that Kendrick Lamar's top 10 song TV Off was saying because everybody wanted to turn their TV off after Super Bowl 59. We'll touch on that on Total Football Talk. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Total Football Talk. Total news, gridiron action, and fun just the way you like it. I'm one of the co-hosts of this program. That is Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the the mad scientist and the EP of all EPs. But I am not alone in this endeavor. My co-host joins me as always. I'm talking Mr. Gridiron Report, Commander's Gridiron Report. I'm talking Mr. In-Out Sports Debate. I'm talking Mr. D. Will in the evening. That's right. D. Willie himself, a.k.a. Drew Willingham. How are you, sir?
Doing great on this Monday afternoon as we are out here in these streams. Welcome to all of you who are watching via YouTube on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome, or on Comey Media, as well as on X, formerly known as Twitter, as we are live. And to those of you listening on the audio platforms, we greatly appreciate you as well.
Oh, thank you, Elon. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Elon, for charging us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I guess he needs to have that pretty penny, but
$11 a month.
We'll talk about that. I guess we'll talk about.
Sure will. We sure will talk about that at some point, Elon. We sure will.
But what we will discuss now is on opening drive. Oh boy.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Quick!
Now, unless you are Eagles fan or Chiefs hater fan or Chiefs dynasty hater fan or a Taylor Swiftie hater fan, you did not like what you saw, but did not matter. Super Bowl 59 took place in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the Caesars Superdome on Sunday evening. One team decided to show up, and the other team was the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, the final score of Super Bowl 59 was the Eagles 40, the Chiefs 22. The game wasn't even that close because it was 40-6 at one point and 34-0 just about halfway through the third quarter. Jalen Hurts, who ended up being the Super Bowl MVP and the one dared to actually having to beat the Chiefs, did so. 17-22, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a Brian Cook interception. He also carried the ball 11 times for 72 yards. He also had a tush push or brotherly shove touchdown to boot. Saquon Barkley, who the game plan definitely for the Chiefs defense was he's getting nothing on the ground. 25 carries, 57 yards, but he did factor into the passing game a little bit, 6 receptions for 40. But the running game did do damage. The 57 from Barkley and the 72 from Hurts, among even more from Gainwell as well, gave the Eagles 140 rushing yards. But not to be outdone, the defense Milton Williams, for example, 2 tackles for losses. A quarterback hit 2 sacks and a forced fumble because one of those sacks was a strip sack fumble that was recovered by the Eagles. Josh Sweat, 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits, and 2.5 sacks on the night. And the 2 sacks for Williams and the 2.5 sacks for Sweat. That's 4.5 of the 6 sacks, along with the 6 tackles for losses and the 11 quarterback hits of Patrick Mahomes in the game for them. Now, Jake Elliott, he was 4 for 4 with his leg with a long of 50 yards. So all phases did pretty well for the Eagles. And then we get to Patrick Mahomes. 21 of 32, 257 yards. He did throw for 3 touchdowns, but he threw a Sack Bond interception and a Cooper DeJean, yes, not Dijon, DeJean, a 38-yard pick 6. He also had 4 carries, 25 yards, and I mentioned, of course, the lost fumble off of a sack. Xavier Worthy had a good coming out party of sorts. 8 receptions, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I mentioned the Brian Cook pick off of the arm of Jalen Hurts. This game was absolutely ugly. This game was dumpster fire worthy. This game was dumpster pelican worthy. This game was bowling shoe ugly worthy as well. Your thoughts on the Eagles winning their 2nd Super Bowl in 7 years?
You said it yourself. It was all of the above. Double click action, because that's exactly what happened in this game, Cole Johnson. Bowling shoe ugly, dumpster fire worthy, because the Kansas City Chiefs showed up like the entire flock there was of this right here. These dumpster pelican flocks. That's exactly what should have. Let's bring it up one more time. The flock of dumpster pelicans, it was all of them, every single one of them. For the first time in 76 consecutive weeks of this program, we have a flock of dumpster pelicans on the screen as the entire team. You rank them from the front. That is Travis Kelce, number 1, with the drops that he had. Leading the way with the biggest beat there is Travis Kelce, followed by Patrick Mahomes. Followed by DeAndre Hopkins with the amount of drops that he had. Followed by well, you can't even put him on the list because he was the highlight of the almost entirety of the game. Xavier Worthy had better stats between any receiver or running back on both teams.
That's correct.
Yet he played for the worst team on the field. Yes, I just did it. The entire flock of dumpster pelicans it was. The Kansas City Chiefs. Let's break down
flock.
The entire flock. 34-0, Cole Johnson, through 2.5 quarters. 2.5 quarters. It was 34-0.
34-0.
This was absolutely atrocious. I mean, yes, the score was 40-22, but it was not even that close.
No, it was not.
You give them that score on paper. Yes, but we gave too much credit to the Chiefs.
I will admit I did too. Yes,
both of us did, and so did all of America. You know,
yes.
I got to give a shout out to Dante. I'm sure we'll see him at some point on this program. You know, he actually came with a D Willie in the evening and talked with us on Saturday night with myself and Sick. We were talking about things that had nothing to do with football. Absolutely nothing to do with sports. Just like,
I see. Nice.
It took like 2.5 minutes for him to put his prediction in there. But, you know, mainly we were talking about things we can't talk about on these airwaves this morning.
Right.
What we can do is say that Dante said that, you know, the Eagles were going to win. And I was joking around saying, you know, of course, the refs are going to show up on that day. And you and I were talking about the beginning of the game. I was texting you saying the refs are already here. With that A.J. Brown near, you know, that 4th down play where it was like 4th and 2 and they were going for the deep ball and he caught a beautiful catch, set up a nice first down right there in front of the goal line to where they would have set up their first score of the game. But even that one call, they knew they couldn't slow down what was coming, because that was the slowest point of the game when it was 0-0 on the Eagles' first drive of the game. Neither team scored on their first drive, but when they came back for their second drive, the Eagles said, "We are not messing around out here." And they went, because they came back out there and they were slinging the rock, because that's all they could do for a while. Because the one thing that did happen in the positive light for the Chiefs is they were able to contain Saquon Barkley throughout the day on 25 carries. 57 yards, averaging 2.3 yards per carry. One of the worst performances of the year on the ground for Saquon Barkley, wouldn't you say?
I would probably say it was. And you just knew that was the strategy. I mean, the Chiefs defense and Spagnuolo basically said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Number 26, you can hand the ball to him. I don't care how many times. If he gets on average 2 or 3 yards a carry, he'll be very fortunate. It's not going to happen. This guy is not going to beat us. We're going to make sure that it's going to be number one that has to beat us. Oh my gosh. And he picked apart that Chiefs secondary. And he took his time to pick apart that secondary. And then he took his time to do the runs necessary to move the chains too. I mean, it was a really good, solid plan by the offense. I was just so bowled over by the Eagles front four on defense.
Yes.
I thought one of the strong portions of the Chiefs team was their offensive line, but you wouldn't tell it by Sunday night. You would not have known that by how that front four just decimated them and kept putting Mahomes to the turf. Just kept having him have happy feet, having him throw in different positions where he just couldn't consistently get solid and set to throw. I'll dare say even worse than the 31-9 butt whooping they took 5 years ago in the Super Bowl, including that. And yeah, Mahomes had representable stats. This was the worst game I think he has played as a pro, because that Eagles front four, 6 sacks, and they did not blitz one single time. That was an impressive performance to me. I mean, my jaw still dropped to the floor because of that.
They knew Spags had the answer for the blitz. So,
they did.
No, my apologies. No, Andy Reid had the answer for the blitz as far as his play calling or whatnot. So when it comes to this team right here, I got to say this. You put a big nail on the head. We thought that the offensive line of the Eagles was going to have their way, and it was going to be the biggest force. But unfortunately, looking at the stats of the game, you would think 40 points. This offense absolutely dominated. The Eagles offense did, and that's not the case. It was the defense, like you were saying, because that front four was absolutely punishing that offensive line on the Kansas City Chiefs side. And like you said, they did it without rushing. They did it without rushing. All they did was it was brutal. They were literally punching them in the mouth without punching them in the mouth. They were beating them up right here, like chest wise. It was like off the line. You were. It was one of the first games that I could think of in quite some time where it was that physical on the front line, and it was in the favor of the defense as big as it was. You normally see a contest or two within the offensive line, whether it's on the outsides or within the middle. Yeah. But you don't see the entire line getting worked like that. The entire line was getting worked. And, the pickup they made this offseason from the we were in New Orleans. He went back home pretty much from New Orleans. Zach Bond coming back to New Orleans. Doing what he did in the Super Bowl. Like you said, what a pickup. I mean, 3 tackles, 4 assists, and had an interception in this game. And laid out for the interception for that.
Yes. God, that was a good chat. That was a good effort for the pick. No question.
Between him And Josh Sweat, you know what he did? You know, these young players that are coming in. I mean, Josh Sweat been in the league for a little bit, 27 years old, but from Florida State, old Seminole. You can say what you want for the name and the logo, but hey, that's what he was back in the day, coming from that team.
Right.
Coming to Philadelphia, doing what he did. You know, Bond had the interception. Cooper DeJean, like you said, had an interception and ran it back for a pick six. His first of his entire NFL career as a rookie. Did it in this game in the Super Bowl. Big games by these players, man. You know, looking at this for what it is, you would think, like I said, 40 points, that this was an offensive beatdown from the Eagles to the Chiefs, and it wasn't, because Hurts, although he got the MVP, he only had 5 incompletions, one of those being an interception. Did have 2 passing touchdowns and 221 passing yards. But the big stat line here that I would say that tips the scales for me, when you have someone like Saquon Barkley through 17 games ran for north of 2,000 yards for the season. We're talking about he was going to be running for or he could have the opportunity to run for the record in 16 games. Decided to sit out the 17th game, so of course save yourself for this moment, which we will say for the end of time paid off.
It did.
Smart move.
It did.
You know, you leaned heavily on your running game throughout the season, and you couldn't really get it going in this game. You're going to look on paper today and see 25 carries for 57 yards, averaging 2.3, like I said. But a lot of those carries didn't come until later in the second half because they couldn't establish it in the first half. All they could really do was dink and dunk, and then also throw a couple looking ladders here and there throughout the first half. But they were beating them down. They were absolutely beating them down in this first half. Going into the second half, it got to 34-0 with 2 minutes left on the clock in the third quarter. There was literally 17 minutes and 40 seconds left in the game, and it was 34-0. They still had a goose egg up there for the Chiefs, and it took until like 30 seconds left in the third quarter for Xavier Worthy to finally get the first of 2 touchdowns. Like you said, absolutely crazy. The highlight for the Chiefs was a rookie, and that was Xavier Worthy. 8 receptions, 157 yards on the day, 2 touchdowns. I mean, for a rookie, absolutely insane. All the hype on Travis Kelce being the greatest tight end of all time. Where was he at? Where was he at on this day? 4 receptions, 39 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, the amount of drops this man had, and he had that one when they were still within the grasp of the game. It was 17-0. It was 17-0, Cole, when he was wide open. It was the right side of the field. It was a first down. It was right in his hands. And he dropped it. And that was the first of several different drops that he had, that Kelce had. The only one that looked good on the team was Worthy.
Yep.
So, in this case, you got some moves you need to make this offseason, and we've been talking about it for 2 years. And you and I talked about it last year after the Super Bowl, even when they won. This team is going to have to make upgrades on their offensive line. They're not going to be able to get by with this. And surprisingly, they made it to the Super Bowl for a third consecutive year with this offensive line. There's no excuse now for them to not make moves this offseason, because you let go of Nick Algoretti last year, and look at what happened for him going to Washington and help being a staple to that offensive line and why they got the NFC championship. So who's to say if you were able to retain him this past offseason that could have tipped the scales? I don't think so, because of the amount of pressure that you had coming at you, and not in a rushing type of way. You just have pressure in your face all day. So I don't think he would have made that much of a big difference. But you need 2 or 3 Nick Algorettis this offseason. And whether you get it through hook or by crook, through the draft, free agency, or trade, you're going to have to make the moves this offseason, because there's no way that this team is going to be able to bring back people like Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and other aging stars who are closer towards the end than the beginning. If you're in a big rebuild mode, you've got to make the moves now. It is not a 2 or 3 year plan. It is you got to retain what you got as far as the success that you've had at this point by making some moves for next season already now.
And now you have to look at, and that's a good point with Kelsey. And now you got to look at the two studs that you have now on your team, which it's easily on offense is Patrick Mahomes, and on defense is Chris Jones. You got to look at them. Both are in their primes now. And we actually saw in that game Sunday, Jones looked the worst for wear. And you were talking about the physicality that the Eagles just brought. We witnessed, even though the Eagles did not run the ball all that well, they did run the ball effectively. Didn't run it all that well, but they did run it effectively. We were actually seeing the effects of this. Goodness gracious, I still can't believe the stats of these guys. He was showing the effects of the Eagles offensive line, which on average they stand 6'6" and they weigh almost 340 pounds. That's on average. That's not the biggest man they got.
In the first Super Bowl, it was 245 pounds.
Right. Yeah. It was like 6'3", 245. What a difference 60 years make. I'm like, the average. This wasn't the biggest offensive lineman they have. This was the average offensive lineman they had. 6'6" and like 338. And you were actually seeing the wear and tear get to him. And that has to be a concern too, because they do not sniff anywhere close to the Super Bowl unless number 95 is actually clicking on all cylinders and number 15 is clicking on all cylinders. Because we witnessed on both sides of the ball, both of them basically be spent, basically give forth the effort that just was not good enough to even come close to lifting either side of their responsibilities to a productive level. It just was, it was bad for both of them. And now I think they're going to have to look at, we may have to retool around them so we can actually preserve them. And you mentioned the offensive line, which I agree with you. I think they have to think about retooling that offensive line to protect Mahomes. Otherwise, we're going to see more of these types of games, and it's not going to be pretty what the result's going to be. And I'm not talking about throwing picks and strip sack fumbles either. And with Jones, you actually just might see more offenses and offensive lines roll blocking packages in his direction. You might see more teams run at him, if for no other reason just to hurt him and to render him ineffective. And if that's the thought that if that's the thought the Chiefs are going to have in thinking of, wow, we got to protect our biggest assets, that might be a dangerous sign of this might be as far as they go, and now they probably going to be on their way downward. Now, am I saying that this is a sign of that? No. I'm saying that and I agree with you, if the Chiefs don't get an offensive line retooling that is better suited for Mahomes and his ability now, and if Jones doesn't get the pass rusher, and yes, I know George Karlaftis is pretty good as a pass rusher, but he's a diverse guy. He's not the guy that he puts his hand in the dirt and he just rushes the quarterback. No, he does many different things. It's time for the Chiefs to get a pass rusher. And I think it's also time for the Chiefs to get a space eater too, along with it, because you're having Jones do all of that. You have him eating up space, doing run stoppage, and doing pass rushes. And you can't have that on him. He has to pick one of those, but not all of them. And that defense has to get more talented on the front too.
Hope they can find the help in the draft like the Eagles just did, because the Eagles, with Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean,
yes.
Those two picks from this past year, absolutely huge, paying dividends. And came in big for the defense this year in a year where you lost James Bradbury in August before the season even started due to that leg injury.
That's correct.
With the fractured leg, that people were talking about, and we even talked about that injury, back in August, how that could affect this team and their defense throughout the season. And for myself and anybody else throwing anything out there like that, we were wrong. I'll sit here this morning on the day after the Super Bowl and tell you that we were ill-informed.
Yes, we were. I was.
We just didn't think that the two rookies like Mitchell and DeJean would make that much of an impact to make up for one person like Bradbury, who, even though he had that PI call in the Super Bowl the 2 years ago, it was made up for, nullified in the fact that the Eagles won 2 years later. Now, of course, you got players like Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, who have retired and moved on since that game, that can't reap the benefits of that. But, for James Bradbury wasn't in this game either, which sucks. But at the same time, for them to get a 2-for-1 special pretty much with your rookies basically, fill in the void. They literally had a 2-for-1 special and fill in the void for the Eagles defense with those two rookies. I got to say, give them credit where it's due. Cooper DeJean definitely deserved the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. Quinyon Mitchell in the top three, the third in top three for that award as well. But for DeJean to get that at the honors this past week, absolutely big. And he proved in the Super Bowl why he deserved it. And he didn't even have a pick six returned yet. At that point, right? So that was kind of like the icing on the cake for everybody that voted for him. Icing on the cake for everybody that supported him throughout his career up until this point for making it to the Eagles. But I wanted to make sure that I touched base on that how big those two were additions to this team. It took 4 or 5 seasons, been 6 seasons, 2018 that he came onto the Eagles. But really, Josh Sweat finally, coming into his own in this game. A 4th-round pick back in 2018. Yeah, he was with the team back in 2022 when they went previously, but I don't recall him being this much of an impact player on that Super Bowl team.
No, I don't either.
He had to step it up. You look at what this team did overall as a whole. They had 4.5, 5.5, 6 total sacks on the day, with no, like you said, no rushes,
no blitzes. That is amazing to me.
When was the last time we ever saw that?
Dare say probably the Bucks win, maybe over the Chiefs, maybe. I would definitely say the Giants defense is back in 2007. That definitely is the last time I know that happened. But
an entire game without a sack. But an entire
game without a blitz.
Without a rush. Without a blitz, yes. But how many times have we seen an entire game go without a blitz and you have that many sacks? Let alone a sack.
Now that's a good question. That's a good question. I can't recall a team amassing that many sacks and you only rushed 4. That's why I said, although I tipped my cap and I figured if Jalen Hurts had a decent game, he was going to get MVP. But I was like, man, that front 4 deserves that. And to your point about Mitchell and DeJean, this is how effective they were. And you could say, well, only between them they only had an interception. Well, if people don't know football, this is a clear-cut sign. If you're able to get pressure with only 4, if you're able to get pressure with your defensive line, that means your linebackers are covering pretty well down the field at anything intermediate, I would say between 5 and maybe 20 yards downfield. And that secondary, which 2 of them were rookies, as you mentioned, they sealed up anything deep. So many of those sacks could be considered coverage sacks, as they say. And when you have a defense that can rush 4, normally the 7 behind them aids in that severely. And Sunday night was of no exception. I just am. I'm so well. I'm proud of the defensive effort that the Eagles had. And look, people were talking, and I even talked about Steve Spagnuolo, and actually, Spagnuolo called a pretty good game. I mean, he only got burned maybe a couple times, really. But let's flip it to the other side. Vic Fangio, not the greatest of head coaches, but man, does that guy know how to play and call defenses? Goodness gracious.
Yes.
Ooh, man. I mean, I did not think I would ever see Patrick Mahomes in his prime be flummoxed. And that's where I am today. I'm like, wow, they actually made Mahomes look like he was back at Texas Tech. Where it's like, yeah, I know what to do, but I don't have the time to do it. And then force mistakes out of him in trying to have something be done, because the Chiefs had one less yard, 23, than the Eagles had points, 24, going in the half. So, yeah, Vic Fangio, that dude called a masterful game on defense.
Dolphins
Masterful.
stupid.
Oh my gosh.
Dolphins stupid. But hey, when it comes to Vic Fangio, he deserved to get the Super Bowl ring, because he just missed the boat when it came to his time with the Ravens, because his final year with them as a linebackers coach was in 2009. They won the Super Bowl a few years later. Okay.
Right.
Goes to San Francisco 49ers 2 years after leaving the Ravens for a 4-year stint as defensive coordinator, and they made it to the Super Bowl in Jim Harbaugh's first stint as a head coach, but then lost that first Super Bowl as well. That's when Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback for that team back then. And then, of course, you look at his time as defensive coordinator with the Bears. The Bears are the Bears. Of course, we already knew he was in a bad spot to begin with there.
Right.
But I would say, his time with the head coach in Denver kind of revitalized him as his defensive play calling goes, because he did a pretty decent job in Miami. It was the offense and Tua's concussion history that really affected them throughout that 2023 season, and he was kind of the scapegoat. And it was
unfortunate.
Heir apparent is that, because in 2024, look at what he did as defensive coordinator for the Eagles. I mean, Vic Fangio got the best out of his defense, and with a lot of rookies. And another rookie to talk about. We were talking about the Gene and Quinyon Mitchell. I want to talk about one who is the son of an Eagles legend, who is a Super Bowl champion now. One who, in his 12-year tenure in the NFL, fought hard to be part of teams to try to be competitive for a Super Bowl championship. Was part of the Eagles from 98 to 2001. Then came to my team, the Washington, formerly known as the Redskins, from 02 to 03. Went back to the Eagles and was part of that team that appeared in their second ever Super Bowl. First with Donovan McNabb and T.O., and they lost that game historically to the Eagles. But then after his 3 years tenure with the Eagles for his second stint, went to Tampa Bay for a year, was out of the league in 2008, and came back in 2009. His son, the second of his name, was part of the Philadelphia Eagles for this Super Bowl championship. I give you the one and only Jeremiah Trotter. His son was on this team for the Super Bowl. And we talk about Vic Fangio and what he got out of his rookies, the best out of Cooper DeJean, the best out of Quinyon Mitchell. And now we sit here and we talk about another rookie who did play in this game. Didn't record any stats, of course, because he played garbage time towards the end. But him wearing number 54.
Oh, the same number. That's right.
Of his father. Yes. Trotter Jr. In honor of his father, Jeremiah Trotter, number 54 was on the field. That, even though I'm not a fan of the Eagles and my team is a rival of theirs, for someone who loves the historical part of football, wasn't it nice, Cole Johnson, seeing a number 54 bearing Jeremiah Trotter win a Super Bowl on this Sunday?
Yeah, um, considering the travails of his father, uh, basically playing on what I call the Eagles at that time, the little engine that could, with Donovan, the team led by Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid, getting to countless NFC Championship games, but they found ways to lose them. Then finally they break through in 2005, only to lose to the Patriots. Yeah, you being a football historian as well as I am, yeah, it is cool to see that. Uh, just as and it was cool to see his son actually get a chance to set foot on the field, and that's a moment that he can share with his father. And I'm sure he can actually say, "I did this for you, pops." Because if I was in the same situation, that's what I would think. If my father played and I got a chance to be on the field and he didn't do this, but I did. Oh yeah, and I mean I would go so far as to give him my ring. That's as far as I would go with it. But yeah, that was a great moment, and I was glad that it was such garbage time that we got a chance to witness that. But that should tell you how bad the butt whooping was. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, because if it was a normal game, he would not have seen time.
No.
Unless it was through kickoffs.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah, special teams. Yeah, that's the only time you probably would have seen the field. But yeah, but it still was a good moment to think about that. And I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I was thinking, it's like, hey man, I was like, Jeremiah tried his son. He said he's on the Eagles, right? Yeah. I'm like, oh, and yeah, it was good to see him.
There's not many players that are playing that have been in this spot. We look at Antonio Cromartie Jr. Of course, with him playing. You also got to look at who's the guy on the Buccaneers, who's the second of his name.
Antoine Winfield.
Yeah, Winfield Jr. He played with got in his rookie year, got the Super Bowl with Brady.
Right.
So this goes to show, and it's funny. This is another rookie who's the second of his name, of a father who played in the NFL at a pretty high level. Because I mean, Jeremiah Trotter, he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he had 4 Pro Bowls. He's part of the Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Fame.
He was prominent. Yeah, he was prominent on that team. Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia Eagle Hall of Famer, first team All-Pro in 2000, second team All-Pro in 01, but again, 4-time Pro Bowl, and was a consensus All-SLC player and consensus All-American in 1997. Also, they are the only father-son duo. And if somebody knows any different, let me know. You can fact check me out here in the stat, but I'm pretty sure they're the only father-son duo, first and second of their name, to wear the same number, play for the same franchise, and both record a sack. Because even though it's only a half a sack, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. had
That's right, he did have half a sack, yeah.
In this past season, had 25 tackles in 17 games and did start in week 17. So he did have week 18 in the final game of the season did start. But in comparison to Pops, he did what he did. And Pops had 12 and a half sacks, so he only has 12 more sacks to go to catch Pops. So Jeremiah Trotter can definitely be smiling on this Monday about his son and what he did the previous day.
Yeah. Well, this was an absolute thumping. I mean, I did not think it was going to happen. I did say this, and I was on no credentials required on Saturday with the crew, Destin Henry and Ryan McCarthy, and he actually correctly predicted that the Eagles was going to win. And I said, and I think he said it was going to be like 38-34. And he actually said the Eagles would jump out to a big lead and the Chiefs would have to feverishly come back. And that's how he derived the final score. I think it was like 38-34. And I actually said to him, I said, if the Eagles scored that high amount of points, it is in their favor. Because my thought was it was going to be a lower scoring game. And it went out the window when Mahomes just wanted to be mistake prone. And Yeah, I had to give you props, Ryan. You called it, bro. Congrats. And congrats to the Eagles.
So you mean the episode with McCoffey, Dustin Henry, and
Yes,
I
the
even
one.
gave McCoffey a hard time about that. I said, how in the expletive can you have half a total football talk on this show and not invite the other half when he is off on Saturdays? And he goes, my bad, and then invited me for this upcoming Saturday. So I'll be there next Saturday.
Good.
But I told him, and I'll even say it here, how can you do that when you know that I'm off? How can you only have half of TFT? How can you have two, and then you also bring in... And you didn't bring me in. I gave him a hard time. But
you had fun torching him.
still, had fun, of course. But I'll give him a hard time again on Saturday morning. But
I'm sure you will.
I'll bring my cup of coffee, my cup of Joe, and show on up with McCoffey and Dustin Henry tandem, and we will talk some shenanigery in football. But again, that was a great prediction for him to choose the Eagles. But time of possession, as we talked about last week, time of possession was going to be the big key in who wins this game. And 37 minutes in comparison to 23. And what they did with those 37 minutes was absolutely wild. The big thing is, we talked about the refs and how they were helping out the Chiefs. And penalty-wise, the Eagles took more penalties, 8-7. But they had a whole lot less penalty yards. Within the 7 penalties, the Chiefs, it cost them 75 total yards. And that fumble by Mahomes was big, too. Mahomes had 2 interceptions and fumbled the ball.
Right.
Absolutely huge. And the fact that the Eagles forced the Chiefs to punt 6 times. That was another big factor in this game.
Yeah.
The amount of plays that the Eagles got off 70 plays this game in comparison to 49 for the Chiefs. I mean, if it wasn't for Jalen Hurts making up for Saquon, I think this game would have been different. And I want to bring that up because you have to have a quarterback that's mobile today. The days. That's why Tom Brady absolutely had to retire when he did. There was no more forcing it for a 24th year. The game has evolved so much to where you cannot have a statue back there in the pocket. There is no way that you can make it to the Super Bowl and win games without the quarterback that can escape the pocket just a little bit. I mean, just a little bit. You got to be able to dance around a little bit. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life in this game, okay? Scrambling around 10 and 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage just to stay alive. It was barely getting the ball off. Yes, and 6 sacks on him, like you had said. And it was all without a blitz. So, looking at it for what it is, this Chiefs team, in comparison to what the Eagles have established in 3 seasons now, 3 main seasons of really building a team, and 2 seasons after being in the Super Bowl and getting beat the way they did, they tried to figure out how are we going to put a team together that can beat this Kansas City Chiefs team, and they had to get a physical, up-front physical on that front line. We're going to knock you in the mouth and knock you down and have our way with you type of team, and they did. The question is now, can they sustain it? Are they going to be able to do this for another 1 to 2 to 3 years in a similar way to the Chiefs did? And that's a question that we have the entire offseason and all of next season and many seasons to come, because I feel like this Eagles team is going to be a very tough one to deal with in the NFC for the following 2 to 3 years, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, when you have on the offensive side of the ball guys who are just now in their mid-20s in Saquon and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, yeah, that tells you something. The only they'll have to down the line is retool their offensive line, because unfortunately, probably in the next few years, they will have to find a way to maneuver without someone like a Lane Johnson on their line. But yeah, that's a really good question to ask. And then you flip it on the other side, you got man children on that side. When we talk about Cooper DeJean, uh, and his partner as well in secondary, but then on the front, you got Nolan Smith, you have no Kobe Dean, you have Jalen Carter, you have Jordan Davis. It's like, geez, how young are you? And they have all this youthful exuberance, and now most of them have the experience going deep in the playoffs to boot. That's a scary thing when you think about it. Yeah. The book on defending the Chiefs, obviously, is almost similar to that of when you played the Patriots when Brady was the quarterback. You rush for, and you got to assign one of those linebackers to be a spy, and sort of assign him to be a spy, would be a spy on the sly, where it's not he is a spy. He just takes that look of, all right, does the defensive front have him solid? If so, cool, I can be in coverage. If not, I can break off coverage if he breaks contain, and I can be a guy who can, especially if you're the middle linebacker, I can just eat that space up and be like, oh yeah, I got him before he rumbles downfield. To your point of, you got to have a mobile quarterback now, not necessarily a guy who does not know how to throw down the field, but you got to have someone who has the mobile ability. I hate to say it in this vein, but I think it does apply in this case, that can compensate for offensive lines that are not quite athletic enough to deal with athletic defensive line fronts. Because that's also another key. You gotta have an athletic defensive line, one that has a whole lot of motor, one that has a lot of strength, but also ones that have a lot of speed, that they can beat a big bulky guy to a spot and beyond the spot, because they got to be quicker to get to a more mobile quarterback faster. So those are things you have to think about. And as for the Eagles is concerned, the issue with them is, can they sustain having the philosophy on offense they have, where it's not going to be every year you're going to have Saquon Barkley gain 2,000 yards in a single season on the ground. This sounds really cold to say it like this. Normally, when you have a guy who runs for that much, the next year, for a few exceptions, it normally goes downhill for them, and you normally have to deal with injury-prone issues starting the year after he gains 2,000 yards or more. I'm not wishing, praying, or wanting that for Saquon Barkley, because I think it's great when running backs could run for as much as he did. But then the Eagles offense has to think, okay, well, so if we can't rely on this guy giving us 2,000 yards or at least 150 yards a game, how can we still be explosive in the run game and not exhaust Jalen Hurts in the process? And that is the issue I think they have to ask themselves as the Eagles going forward, in terms of, I think we could run, do the same thing like the Chiefs have done. Okay, I think we can get 3 in 4 years' time. That's an issue that I think they have to deal with offensively. Defensively, I think they couldn't be any better than they already are on the standpoint of, the only loss they may have would be Darius Slay.
Yep.
I can't think of a big time loss defensively they'll have other than him. Either this to next year or next year to 2026. I can't think of one, because they've retooled that defense to the point where they're also young, that I think they're really in good shape. So The Eagles, I think, can set themselves up for a good long run. The only question mark is, can they find another way to get offense and be as explosive on offense without exhausting Jalen Hurts on the ground? And do they have a contingency plan should Saquon Barkley break down in the middle of the year? I think those are the two questions that the Eagles in the offseason have to address. And I think offensively, offensive line, I think they're good for now. I don't think anybody's going to be leaving anytime soon. But I know they're going to have to think in the future with like someone like Elaine Johnson. I know that for sure. But
he's already said he'll be back next year. I mean, he said that before the Super Bowl. He has no intentions of leaving. So
at
least they know that.
Mm-hmm.
They got a good chance of running it back.
Oh, they do. They do. I believe they are. And in fact, I think Vegas, they actually said, at least as of now, I think they said the two teams that have the best chance of actually winning it would be the Chiefs and the Ravens. And I think the Eagles are not that far behind. So yeah, I think they can run it back. That's to be the only two questions they have that I have. Can they sustain that rushing attack that's explosive if they have to deal with Saquon being injured? That's the only and do they not exhaust Hurts running along with it? Other than that, I don't see how the Eagles cannot repeat next year from this year, because I think they can do it. And if so, that is a scary thought. Ooh. But yes, once again, the Eagles, they win Super Bowl 59 to the tune of 40-22. The game literally was not that close. It was 34-0 going to almost the end of the third quarter, and 40-6 in the middle of the fourth. Oh, goodness gracious. The Eagles mollywopped the Chiefs. Goodness gracious. Wow.
I mean, I know it's the day after the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I know it's only the day of the Super Bowl, but I think that we saw the end of the dynasty last night for the Chiefs. I know that they're saying that the Chiefs have a good chance of going back next year, but nobody thought they were going to get as far as they did.
What, this year, right?
When you saw the team that we saw, a team that they had to have 12 comeback wins, and those 12 were one score
games.
possession. One possession games.
Mm-hmm.
So a team like that had never done that before and skated by. That's literally like the kid who waited until the last minute to do his homework and then show up to class type of stuff. Like, that's literally what it's like. No structure, just falling apart type of deal. It's literally what it was. They've got to tighten up if they want to have a championship caliber team. And I think that this is it. This is the most that we're going to see out of the current formula. Can Patrick Mahomes and potentially Andy Reid put something together that within the next 2 to 3 years have something similar to what they had and rebuild in a way that the Patriots did? I think so. I don't think it'll take them 10 years like the Patriots did. I also think that Patrick Mahomes will still be able to sustain some type of success away from Andy Reid, because at some point the decision is going to have to be made. It's not going to be now. I highly doubt it, especially with the level what this team is. He's still only 66. But within the next 3 to 4 years, I believe Andy Reid will either retire or will be making the actual firm succession plan. So if the Chiefs were going to rebuild and they were going to rebuild in the time for Andy Reid to still sustain some type of success within the back end of his career, it's going to be right now. I think that we see the end of the current dynasty in the form of Kelsey retires this offseason. I think that there's a really good chance that he retires, because what else is there left for him to do? And does he have 2 years to wait for a team of the caliber of what they were a year or two ago to be put together? I don't know, because with DeAndre Hopkins within 12 years in the league, the amount of drops that he had in this past game, I don't see it being possible that they have a team of 2 years ago ready to go in 2025. It's going to take a season or two of rebuilding. I don't think Kelsey is going to stick around for that. He may come back for one more year, but based on what I just said, we're going to see a team that maybe gets 10, 11 wins. And most teams would be happy to have that. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs playing in the division that you are in, 10 or 11 wins isn't going to cut it to have a number one seed, a first round bye, and to be prepped for a run in the playoffs. I believe we just saw the end of the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty of what we know as right now.
It's the end of the world as we know it, if you're the Chiefs. And I don't feel fine. No, I agree with you. And to further, I guess, stick the heart into Kelsey and bring on that point, we saw a slippage and decline this year and during the season with him.
Yes.
The only really good solid game he had was the divisional round game against the Texans. That was really the only game where you're like, okay, so it looks like he might return to form now that the playoffs are coming. All right, he stepped it up. He has shown a decline already. People said that he had a decline last year. We saw a further decline this year. He's only going to decline further next year. So he could retire as of now. You never know. But what I do know is I agree with you. I see a team where they're going to have to retool, and they may actually have to sacrifice a year in order to do it. Because like I was saying earlier, they got to find a way to protect Patrick Mahomes more and better. And now they got to find a way to protect Chris Jones more and better, because those are your two ways and your two stars that is most responsible for your team going as far as they can go. And if they don't find that pass rusher that can help Chris Jones not do everything on defense, especially on the defensive line, then I agree with you. Then forget as presently constituted, the dynasty's over. We could say the dynasty's over, period, because I don't think they can get as far doing what they did this year going forward. I 100% agree with you. And that offense, that Chiefs offense, needs to be more explosive, both in the running and passing game. They are too conservative in the passing game, and they don't trust the running game. And those two things are strictly very dangerous for someone like number 15 to have a long career where you can say, wow, he is such a great quarterback. And he doesn't get a chance to unfurl a lot of the tools that he can because he doesn't have the time to throw. Because defense, they barely throw 20 or further yards down the field more than once in a game. Yeah, you can't have that. So, yeah, I agree with you. They're going to have to find a way to be a different version of what they have been the last couple of years, or they will be like what the Patriots were and be in the doldrums for a few years before they go back to prominence. And they have the talent they took 3-4 years to rebuild, and now they have been seasoned enough to where they can get back and reascend and be the stalwart star, North Star on, okay, we got to shoot for this team again. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Oh, but before we do continue on with the show, to the comments. One Mr. V, Lock 83, Victor Lock, or as my wonderful colleague likes to say, hello to all in the TFT tribe, and congrats to the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles, who have returned to the mountaintop. Yes, they have. And he says a bow also to the sensei and show love to the EP of EPs. Thank you, sir. Playmaker, it is good to see you. He says, oh, what's up, TFT brothers? He says, how much sleep did the Giants front office got last night? Well, and he does a thinking man's emoji. I would say not a lot, but unfortunately, let me see how I can say it. The way the Giants are set up, I mean, they just shot themselves in the foot. They threw their eggs in the Daniel Jones basket, and they claimed that Saquon Barkley damaged goods, and they didn't build properly around them. and they got what they got. It's unfortunate. Ryan McCarthy, he says, and good morning to you, sir, or afternoon to you, sir. He says, ones to the sky for our TFT Tribal Chiefs. Thank you, sir. Or is it Eagles? Yes. Congratulations on your choice of them. Victor says, look, I'll go ahead and take the kids from the Eagles, because Eagles fans, because I know they're coming. And speaking of Eagles fan, our beloved Eagles fan du jour, Dante Hill. Congratulations to you, sir. He says, what's up, fellas? We won the Super Bowl. Yes, you did. And you earned that Super Bowl, my friend. Your team earned it. He says, our defense is very good. Very good. Let me see. What is it? They allowed the second least yardage in the game last year, and they were the number one ranked team in terms of points allowed. Yeah, your defense is more than pretty good. And the scary part is they can stand to get better. God, that defense is, whoo, man, dude, my jaw was dropping. Yeah, the defense showed up and shut out Sunday night. He says, validation equals Jalen Hurts. Man, let me tell you, man, I've been hearing a lot of people say Jalen Hurts, he's nothing more than a quarterback. The running back is a quarterback's clothing. And in the last two big-time games, the games that you needed, they got him. And they got him because Jalen Hurts was the guy in the pocket messing over opposing defenses. So, yes, congratulations to you on that. He also says the Chiefs, they said Saquon will not get MVP, which he wasn't going to. He said, but this is in the 60s, 70s. They forgot the forward pass. Yeah, there's a thing about, yes, we're going to have Jalen Hurts beat you in the pocket. You got to understand, Jalen Hurts has a pretty good arm, and when he makes decisions and he's settled in the pocket, he actually can make good decisions. And I think people forget that about him. People think, well, he runs well. Yeah, he does, but he makes pretty sound decisions when you give him time to throw. And they gave him time to throw, and Spags did not time some of the blitzes, and when he timed one of them, it was unfortunate for him. Dante says, look, Jalen Carter is a monster. The boys ate well off of him. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Ooh, and that boy's and he's a beast. Jalen Carter is a doggone beast. Sig Diggy says, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Good afternoon to you, sir. And yeah, he's talking about Mahomes with a lot of those stats. Look, those are garbage time stats, which yes, they were. Dak stats. Game over, pat the stats to look good. They didn't pass midfield until the third quarter, and it was long over by then. Yeah.
It was almost the fourth quarter.
It was. Yeah. I was about to say, they didn't even score until almost the fourth quarter. So, yeah. You're right. You're right, sir. Those were garbage stats. It was just horrible. It was just horrible how they just, dude. Your Eagles defense did Patrick Mahomes dirty Sunday night. He's a little. Don't forget Milton Williams. Yeah, that dude was a man too, rushing. He says, remember Josh Sweat had the horrific injury in college, and they still wanted to take his leg. Now, and that's why he's on the snap count. That's right. I totally forgot about that. Thank you for that reminder, Dante. I totally forgot about that. And he also says he thinks this is the beginning of their dynasty. It can be. I already laid out the two questions you got to ask going forward.
You are not getting Myles Garrett. You are not getting Myles Garrett, and that's why this dynasty. You said, you could have a dynasty, but you are not, because you are not going to get Myles Garrett. Can't afford him.
I can't afford him. Well, I mean,
you can.
I don't know if it's about. But the thing is, I don't know if it's about money for him as much as it is about, I guess, success.
The Commanders, you're like literally like a player or two on defense away, and another wide receiver away from going to the Super Bowl. So, like, they need some help on defense to stop the other team. And who's to say, make it a little more competitive. He goes to the Commanders. You already see how much fun they're having. Like, I don't know. there's a lot more promise for a future for a Chiefs-like run in Washington than there is for a very short fat of a like amount of time for a year or two in Philadelphia. Because Saquon, you're going to get this type of production out of him for how many more years? It's a big question mark.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're going to get 2,000 yards worth of production in the season out of him again. And
Never
that's not
again.
and that's not the cast aspersions. It's just very difficult for a guy to gear up and give you that much production over time. I mean, that's a lot.
No
of yards.
other running back that ever hit 2,000 or north of those yards, Dickerson,
Did it again.
Peterson,
Mhm.
OJ, ever did it again.
They never
Ever.
did it. Yeah, they never.
Never, or even scratch the surface within 100 yards of
Mhm.
getting to where they once were.
Right.
So, although it would be cool to see that happen for the first time in history ever,
It
I
would.
really think it would. I'm not throwing shade on it to where I don't want to see it happen.
Same.
I'm just mentally
Same.
preparing myself for it, because then if it does happen, then that's a cool surprise. Then,
Mhm.
But I mean, we have to sit here on this day and say, more than likely, it is never going to happen. You can never
Yeah.
say never. That's why it would be cool for us to be,
Mhm.
for at least for myself, be proven wrong here. I would love to see that happen. But Saquon, just had a birthday, just turned 28 yesterday
Yeah,
on
he's
Super Bowl Sunday.
Right.
He's got 2 more years of running in his 20s, and it's usually about this time where things start to slow down a little bit. Can't really tell King Henry that over there in Baltimore.
Mhm.
But Baltimore has a few more pieces they need help with around the quarterback and running back, as to where in Philadelphia they figured it out.
Right.
And they figured it out with their defense. Baltimore's got to be able to score more than what they're giving up. And we point the fingers all that we want to, but defense is usually the key. And the defense made a big statement for the beginning of Dante's so-called positive dynasty. That's going to be where, if you want to keep the dynasty going, you have to keep building within that defense, because that defense was scary during this playoff run.
Yes. And you know what's so messed up? They seem to get scarier as the time went on. It's like they found themselves in this run, in this stretch. And it's like it took turns. It was like it was the secondary's time to shine with the Packers. It was the linebackers' time to shine with the Rams. It was basically a hodgepodge with the NFC Championship game, where each of the 3 lines of defenses took their turns to shine in that game. And then the Super Bowl, it was a defensive fight. I mean, that's what's so crazy about this game and about this about the Eagles defensively. They defensively showed they can beat you any way you want. Okay, so you have this dominant guy who can get back, drop back, and throw. We can stop him with 4. You have a guy who, with a line, can protect that 4. Well, we got a secondary that can stop that. Oh, you have you have a guy that can do both. Okay, well, we have the linebacking core that can stretch you going east-west, along with a running back too. Yeah, the Eagles defense scares me a whole lot more than the offense does, to be quite honest with you. Dante says, look, let's be clear. You got Washington, you got Detroit. They would have won. The difference between the AFC and the NFC is the AFC is quarterback led and the NFC is front office led. Now it's going to be a very interesting offseason. It will be. He says the Bills and the Ravens, they have to be worried because they weren't going to win against them. Definitely the Bills. I agree with you for both, but if the Ravens coaches actually allowed Henry to run the ball, I think that would have been a really good challenge for you. But the way they seem to be conservative when it comes to the playoffs, I agree with you. I think they would have. I think the Eagles would have beaten the Ravens too. He says, "I told y'all about Jeff Stalin when it comes to the offensive line. It doesn't matter when it doesn't matter. We reload on the O line, Cam at center, and we ain't noticed no difference. It's just success. Yeah. And I think you should be happy about that because." People were thinking, "Oh, well, you have Jason Kelsey's retiring. Oh, there's going to be a drop off." I remember having this conversation with another Eagles fan, and Drew knows him, my boy Cool McCain, and he actually said the same thing to me. He says just watch it, bro. Watch how this next year's going to be. Maybe in leadership it'll be a drop, but in production it won't be. I'll be doggone if he wasn't right. And he said that to me last January. So this wasn't like September, October. He actually said this to me once the Eagles got eliminated from playoffs last year. And he was right. He says, look, the Dolphins players, they feel stupid. They didn't like Vic because he was too hard on them and wasn't, quote, hip, close quote, enough to get them. Ramsey posted him kicking rocks when Vic got let go, and he wasn't the only one. Face palm emoji. Well, it just goes to show you how immature they are, the Dolphins. And I've been feeling that vibe ever since Michael McDaniel became the head coach there. Jalix Hunt, also a rookie. He also balled out. And yes, how about your former commander, Jahan Dotson, getting a touchdown in the Super Bowl Sunday? He said, looks like that trade ended up being a success. I won't say success, but it ended up being solid enough for the Eagles because they didn't have to rely on Dotson.
All right,
Yeah.
let's reel it back in a little bit, Dante. Just a little bit. All right. Yes, it worked out good for you, and he just didn't fit well within the system of what they had and had started with a new for this year over there in Washington. But let's remember this: did not get a touchdown because it was called back because of the penalty. He had two receptions for 42 yards, but his touchdown was called back, Dante. So the trade worked out pretty good, but it did not fully come through because he didn't score any points in the Super Bowl. The ones who were meant to score did, and that was Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts.
You were too funny sometimes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I can't really go so far as to say success. I would say success if Brown or Smith went down with injury and Dotson would replace them for a good amount of time and he actually produced. That to me would be successful. That basically was what it was. It was a depth move. You know, that's really what it was. Oh, Ryan says, to be fair, it was no credentials required debut.
That's my response. This is my response. I'll see y'all Saturday. I'll be wearing my Jaden Daniels People's Elbow t-shirt because I'll be dropping the elbow this Saturday, but in good fun.
Oh, Lord. Not the
having a good time with the brothers. No credentials required. Always good to get up with you guys.
Yeah.
But I'm only giving you a hard time because I wanted to have a good time. But it is what it is. So I know you guys you got so much you can think about. Life is life. It's all good. But we just got to get up. It's been too long. We'll do it this Saturday.
Yeah, that'd be good to see you guys. Chop it up. Dante says, in Howie, talk about Howie Roseman, the GM of the Eagles we trust. Look at our past 4 drafts, 1 through 3. And also some of those free agent picks, too, in trades. He says, remember, Cole, Miles Sanders finished top 5 in rushing. That's true. He did. And DeAndre Swift in 4 years straight. And then you have this season. Yeah, it's true. I get that.
Miles Sanders is 3rd on the depth chart for the Panthers now.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I'm not saying that I don't think you can actually come up with that production. I'm saying how are they going to find a contingency to make up for a one guy running for 2,000 yards in the season by himself? And would it be, like you said, like what was it, 2 years ago when it was a Swift and Sanders and Gainwell and Hurts combination of running? I would hope it's not that with Hurts, but I think they may need to go back to that to a degree. We shall see, but it's going to be difficult for Saquon to gain 2,000 on his own, but I think he's going to have help in doing so. He says, so Eagles free agents are Saquon. I think he probably will leave too. I was thinking the same thing. Who will leave Howie? Howie ain't paying a linebacker, and Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. Now, the Williams and the Sweat portion, that's gonna be difficult because they might have to part with one. I don't know if you want to, but that's gonna be difficult. Tyler Steen will replace Lane or draft pick, but Lane's not gonna be replaced anytime soon. That's the thing. My thought was with Lane Johnson, they're gonna have to think about it down the line, not now, but down the line, like about 2-3 years or so. But now he's fine. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. That's what I was thinking in terms of sustaining what they're doing now, sustaining being at the top now. He says, I don't think this is the end. Remember, Brady had 8 years before getting back to Super Bowl, and that defense is still young, and they have the front office, and they'll make trades and drafts to replace them. He says, look, the Chiefs will still beat the Bills and the Ravens and the Bengals. Granted, their division looks competitive, but they're years away. Maybe. Can't wait until we get Myles Garrett. Well,
Yeah, that's why I said what I said, because Washington has the third best salary cap of all the teams going into this offseason, and the best production out of the top three teams that have the best salary cap available. Why in the expletive would you go anywhere else besides Washington that has an opportunity for you to be successful for the next 3 to 5 years again, rather than potentially for 1, maybe 2? You're talking about a team you could go to and win several Super Bowls as opposed to maybe just 1, or just go and lose. I don't know. And sometimes you go play for a team that just won for a Super Bowl, it might not be the best fit. You might have to go be the best puzzle fixer for a team that hasn't quite scratched the surface yet. And Washington could be that team for you. What there, Myles Garrett? Let me pitch it for you.
Oh, you have a Commander's pitch from Drew. There
it is.
And that's a fit. I mean, they don't really have a pass rusher, and you would fit the bill. Plus, you really good stopping the run too. So I think that'd be great. That would be a great fit. Sig Dickey says, look, the Chiefs could surprise everyone next year and have a good run, not necessarily return to Super Bowl, but make the playoffs. Yeah, we're not saying they're gonna fall off the face of the earth. They'll make the playoffs. They actually still might win the AFC West. To have the success that they've had getting this far, yeah, I agree with Drew. I think they're gonna have to retool a lot of things in a lot of ways to get back there. Dante says, look, if not Garrett, then Micah Parsons. Lord have mercy. Yes, I know. Coming back to his home state. You forget, Sir Drew, we have Howie Rosen. Ain't no such thing as a salary cap.
I mean, there are structures within the NFL. The baseball would be a little bit more flexible than football. I mean, yeah. But they just have like more luxury taxes over there. You just have to pay, which is a difference. But football, it's a little more structured. I'm just pretty sure that with what you've already have established, you're not like stuck where you're at. Of course, you can make moves. This is, professional sports. But I just think you're a little bit more limited than a team like Washington that has the amount of cap available that they have going into this offseason. We've been talking about it for 2 years now.
And we've been talking about the youth too.
Yeah.
There's going to be some times you're going to have these conundrums of having to pay a few of these players after their rookie contracts. And Eagles are loaded with a lot of youth. So that's also something that you'll have to concern yourself with. Same thing with Mr. GM extraordinaire, Howie Rosen, which I'm sure he knows what to do, but that's still going to be a hurdle he's going to have to scale. He says, look, I'm not worried about the running backs because we'll get a free agent. Hopefully. It's just that putting that load on one guy and have him do the same thing in year 2 as he did in year 1, that would be the issue and the question I would have. 6 says there will be a need for a strong running back core to support Saquon next year. I think so too. Dante says, look, I said, and he did say this last week. He said, I said I wanted a 14-point victory, so there's no refs to help them out, and revenge mission accomplished. Oh, he says Garrett is 29, and he doesn't have that many prime years left. No, about maybe 3 or 4, but yeah, I agree with you. Ryan says, look, them boys aren't trading Parsons to another team within the division on top of it or the conference. Dante, this ain't Madden with an LOL. Thank you for that response, Ryan. I agree with you. I don't see the Cowboys getting rid of Parsons and having him go to, of all teams, the Eagles. I don't see that. I just don't. I'm sorry. Nah.
Not today.
If so, yeah. Because if so, that would be a nah. Because if so, that would be a
surprise, motherfucker.
Facts.
I ain't seeing that. I don't think Drew does either. But yeah. That concludes opening drive, and good Lord, the Eagles, I think, are still scoring touchdowns at the Chiefs.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Break!
Where my dogs at? It is time to introduce our grand champ of the week. And Drew, who's yours?
You know, for my grand champ of the week, went a little extra this week. I got a honorable mention and
an honorable
grand champ because of the impact of the offense and the defense from the Philadelphia Eagles in this past Super Bowl's game. I'm going with Zach Bond is an honorable mention. 3 tackles, 4 assists, and 1 interception. Also looks like he's having a great time with that Lombardi trophy in his hand off to the top right side of this graphic. You look at the bottom left-hand corner, that is the actual interception that he had in this game. Zach Bond is my honorable mention for my grand champ of this week for this past Super Bowl 59. And my selection for the grand champ of the week, Jalen Hurts, 17 of 22 for completions out of attempts for 221 passing yards. 2 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. Also added 11 carries on the day for 72 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. My selection for the grand champ of the week, again, for the honorable mention, I got to go defense. I got to go Zach Bond with his impact. The free agent coming on over from New Orleans, playing in his old home field and doing some work. And he did in this game. 3 tackles, 4 assists, 1 interception, as well as my actual grand champ of the week, Jalen Hurts. And these stats right here, the MVP of Super Bowl 59. That is my selection for this week's grand champ of the mother fathering week.
I like that. I like that a lot. And yes, I'm glad that Zach Bond is getting some love, because I just kept seeing him in the playoffs, just make play after play. I'm like, who is this number 53? It's like he just keeps making play after play, and he makes a play in the Super Bowl too. I'm like, jeez. But yeah, good choices. Definitely good choices.
Thank you.
Now, for me, look, I love Jalen Hurts. He proved himself, and I agree with you too, Dante. Validation, definitely for Jalen Hurts. Jalen did his thing. But for me, I still will maintain the rightful Super Bowl MVP, Mr. Josh Sweat. And the reason why I say that, yes, he did have 2 tackles, but the 4 assists, but the 3 quarterback hits, the 2 tackles for losses, and the 2.5 sacks that he amassed. That, to me, he led the way in that vaunted defensive pass rush that only rushed for did not blitz a single time, and he got 2.5 of the 6 sacks that the Eagles amassed. And it is difficult to put Mahomes on the ground and on the turf. They did it 17 times, 6 of them counted as sacks. And so, to me, the MVP of this game, I would give it to all of the front four. But Josh Sweat, he's the guy for me. I think he did it. I think he is the man. And yes, with apologies to Jalen Hurts, Josh Sweat, he was the one who I think set the pace and set the tone for how the rest of the game went for both the Eagles and the Chiefs.
That was an absolutely great pick when it comes to, you think about defense, you think about what these two players did and made their impacts of the game. Really like this pick of Josh Sweat because, we talked about it earlier in the show, 4th round pick, finally coming into his own and making an impact at the age of 27 in this Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yes, he was with the team a couple of years ago, but didn't really make the type of impact and the noise that he did in this Super Bowl right here.
Right.
So I fully support that. When you think about that and what Zach Bond did between these two players, definitely showed up. I mean, all 3 of these players that we selected within this segment right here definitely had a big, huge impact in this game. So I really like it. Great selections between both of us.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree. Yeah. And who is yours? You can drop it in the chat because we would like to know who you think showed up and showed out. And now let's get to the grind scoop, and we're going to go through a few of the things that sort of captured the interest of the grind for the past week. Well, one of the things that would capture our interest and eyes, well, the now former Eagles offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, it looks like he is expected to become the new New Orleans Saints head coach. He may not have to even leave New Orleans, but that is barring any unexpected developments. But league sources told ESPN that Moore has been the top candidate for the Saints job since completing a pair of interviews with the Saints back in January. Now, my question to you is, do you see Moore having success or having the same type of success as he did in leading the Eagles offense to the latest Vince Lombardi trophy, or no?
Really good question, because outside of what Sean Payton did in the late 2000s, early 2010s, there hasn't been anybody else been able to replicate that kind of success before or after in New Orleans. Has it been a good stepping stone place for some coaches? Yes. It's also been a good final destination. I mean, what kind of bad final destination place we think of, like Mike Ditka and others in their time in New Orleans. With their current talent, I don't think you cannot win a Super Bowl with the current talent that you got over there in New Orleans. So it would take a massive overhaul. Yes, it looks like they're finalizing a deal in this current moment, to start this week right after the Super Bowl. But, look at the fact that they waited this long to bring in a head coach over there in New Orleans. It has to be somebody from this previous game, whether it's from Kansas City staff or Philadelphia staff. And the rumors are all around Kellen Moore. And he could be a pretty good fit for this team, a lot better than what they've had. No offense to Dennis Allen, but they need more talent over there. They had no offensive line to protect, whether it's Derek Carr or whoever you got back there. And Spencer Rattler looks like somebody that could play pretty well in the UFL. A league will be covering here in about 6 weeks. But when it comes to Spencer Rattler, he's not the future for this New Orleans team. They have got to make a lot of moves, whether it's via draft or trade or free agency or whatnot. when it comes to me seeing Kellen Moore having the success leading, like he led the Eagles offense to the latest Vince Lombardi trophy, if you're asking me if I think that he's going to lead this team to a Lombardi trophy, I don't think so. And especially not in the next 5 years. He would have to be the head coach there for the next 10 years. They'd have to do a lot of overhaul work, and they would have to have a lot of faith with him and a lot of patience, which is something the NFL does not have on average with their ownership in lieu to their head coaches and who they hire. So, looking at it for what it is, when you see the NFC and what they got around you, when you've got the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that you just helped win a Super Bowl as their offensive coordinator, and you've got teams behind them like the Commanders who are in the same division, like the Detroit Lions who are in another division, but they are coming, and you got other teams as well that are knocking on the door. The NFC, you just got to get through that just to get to the Super Bowl. So I think it's a good place for him to start his head coaching career, but I don't think he'll replicate the success that he had in Philadelphia as a head coach in New Orleans.
100% agree. I do not like the talent they have there now. And I don't really like the commitment to getting better talent there either. So you make a really good point at the end. This might not be where he stays, but if he does well enough to where a team might say, I think you have what it takes to get our team over the hump, and this might be where you need to go later, I can see that. But the Saints themselves being where the Eagles are now, no, I don't see that either.
Imagine what Vrabel did in Tennessee, and
Right.
that's the type of impact I think he'll have in New Orleans, to where he won't stay there but for a few years, but it'll be a good stepping stone for him to go somewhere else. And then it could be he's there long enough for Gerald to have to step down as the one who runs the day-to-day operations for the Cowboys. He gets the job and is like the GM or de facto GM, goes to go into to Dallas. I could see that potentially happening as a result of his tenure in New Orleans.
And that's
just there long enough for Gerald to step down.
And that's a good comparison, Mike Vrabel. That's a really good one. I think that's what he probably needs to aspire to. Probably make just a good enough impact, and hopefully his name is good enough to where he can latch on to a better situation. That makes a lot of sense. Now it looks like it's official. The marriage between Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets, it appears to be on the rocks, maybe even Splitsville altogether, as the future Hall of Fame quarterback is unlikely to remain with the team next year. And this is according to sources being told on Sunday. Now, Rodgers flew to New Jersey last week to meet with the new head coach, Aaron Glenn, and new general manager, Darren Mogi. And Rodgers was informed in that meeting that the team has decided to part ways with him. Now, my question to you is, what teams do you think should enlist Rodgers' services?
That's a good question, because based on what Aaron Rodgers did, you can't sit here and say that out of the 32 teams in the NFL, he doesn't deserve an opportunity, because even at his age and what he's came back from, if this was Aaron Rodgers playing at the level of what he started the 2024 NFL season with, I would sit here today and say that he needs to retire. It's time to hang it up. All right. Like others are trying to crucify completely, or at least after one. Well, I mean, he did have a mediocre run, but he did have a couple games throughout. People are trying to crucify Travis Kelce after the 4 catches for 39 yards and say he needs to retire, after that one game. But Aaron Rodgers, if this was the result of what he did the first half of the year, I would say he needs to go ahead and retire. But he finished the back end of 2024 with some pretty solid stats. He did finally in his last game reach 500 passing touchdowns for the career, and he did that by throwing 4 passing touchdowns in that final game, which something he hadn't done in quite some time. He had 499 passing touchdowns as a career coming into that final game. Through those 4 touchdowns, did pretty well. Looked like shades of himself. He didn't get 500 with Devontae Adams, but he got 501 with him. And wherever he goes, I'm pretty sure Devontae Adams is pretty, sure behind him. And when you look at the teams that need quarterbacks, there's options out there. And could this be a crazy one to think that he and Devontae Adams could potentially go, and Devontae Adams could be the 1B to the 1A in this situation? Could he potentially go to Minnesota and bring Devontae Adams to Minnesota just to punish the Packers? Kind of like Brett Favre did. Brett Favre left the Packers and went to Minnesota after he was with the Jets. Aaron Rodgers just spent one extra year with the Jets. And technically, he only played 1 year because that year that he was with them, he wasn't even playing. So, it's kind of like he had one full season in New York like old Brett Favre did. Coming on back Minnesota now with Devontae Adams. I mean, it's a pretty far-fetched one. You definitely know that Devontae Adams is not going back to the Raiders. Regardless, Aaron Rodgers is not going back to there. I mean, could we see them go? I mean, no, I think Shadir's going there. I say, could we see him go to New York? No, I don't think he's going to New York. I don't see Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams going to Tennessee, which is another place that needs help.
They do, but I don't see that.
It's really a good question because, I mean, another place where is great weather that would be great for them would be Miami, considering what Tua in his concussion history, and if the Dolphins decide to move on from him, get some draft picks, and if they can convince Aaron Rodgers to come for more than just one season, if he can go there for 2 years. Because if Brady can play to 45, Aaron Rodgers could play to 43. He would be playing year 41. He would turn 42 in December. If he can play the next 2 seasons, and it's worthwhile investment for the Dolphins to trade Tua and get some draft compensation for him, you get Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. I kind of like. I like as I say that I see Dante say he could go to Miami. That would be a good spot, but outside of I don't see a team in the NFC that really that could use him. I mean, what do you think? Besides, because Minnesota, it's just me saying it out there. They're not. I think they're going to keep Sam Darnold, bring him back for another year because they want to feel out what's going on with J.J. McCarthy. Because we've seen Aaron Rodgers, we've seen Kirk Cousins, 2 quarterbacks where Kirk Cousins, he might be fine by next year, but he never fully came back like Kirk Cousins before the injury in his knee. Aaron Rodgers, it happened to him earlier in the 2023 season, and it took him until the back end of the 2024 season for him to be like Aaron Rodgers again. And really, mainly the last handful of games, it really took him for us to really see glimpses of him of the past. So I think by next year, you're going to have a fully healthy Kirk Cousins, and you're going to have a fully healthy but older Aaron Rodgers. If you have to choose between the two, I think teams are going to choose Kirk Cousins over Aaron Rodgers, especially if you have a cheaper option to potentially get Kirk Cousins at. But, I mean, this is also the Falcons got to get out of that contract. So this is a completely different scenario there as to where Aaron Rodgers, I believe, is completely free once they scrap his contract. Like, he'll be able to sign with another team. They're not going to – I don't think they're trading him. I think they're just releasing him. So it's 2 completely different scenarios. You have Kirk Cousins, which they're going to probably find a way to trade, or they release him and take a big hit. Aaron Rodgers is a lot cheaper. You know, I disregard what I just said with that part. When it comes to teams, I could see, like Dante and I were saying, you got the Dolphins. Vikings are a long shot.
Yeah,
I don't see him going to the Saints. I don't see either one of those two going to the Saints, even with Kellen Moore. That's just too much of a rebuilding situation.
Yeah.
If you're going to go anywhere and have any potential opportunity to make some noise, I don't think you're going to go to the Super Bowl. The Dolphins really is your best bet. I mean, where else are you thinking? Because the Raiders, Devontae's not going back there. Do you see a viable NFC team outside? I mean, the Giants are looking more like they're in the Shadur Sanders sweepstakes.
Yeah, yeah, they're going
I don't
young.
see Seattle.
That would be. I was going to say it would have to be a team like them, like the Seahawks. However, I don't think it would fit what Aaron Rodgers would want, if in the long term, in the long run. If I would say if Matthew Stafford was a little longer in the tooth, I would say the Rams, but that's not going to happen. Let me see. NFC. I'm laughing because I was thinking, hey, it could be the Cowboys, but no.
No,
No, I know it's not. I know it's
that
not.
contract
Yeah, yeah.
looks
Other
worse
than
than
yeah, other
Kirk Cousins' situation.
yeah, I'm gonna say other than that, the only other situation that would fit him would be the Saints or the Falcons. But like you said, the Saints, no, they're right now they're building something new, and they would have to retool all right when Kellen Moore's trying to establish something, so that won't work. And then the Falcons, like you said, they're gonna have to get rid of that huge contract that they signed Kirk Cousins to. That he will be in his second and his fourth year of it. So yeah, I would say the Seahawks or the Falcons probably, but for the NFC, but that's both are tough asks though.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Seahawks or the Falcons. I could see, AFC. What if, and if it's for a 2-year deal, what
Mhm.
they tried to do this past year? What if Pittsburgh brings in Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams? You got
That would be a good
Pickens,
fit.
Adams,
There we go.
Rodgers.
There you go.
That would be the
That'd be almost
only
an ideal team.
team in the
Mhm.
AFC where he could go and be a true winner, where there's an actual question mark on the quarterback position, because Russell Wilson proved that. I mean, he did okay, but they want somebody that could be potentially better. And could an older Aaron Rodgers do that? If he can move like he did in that Week 18 game,
Mhm.
especially with how he got that 500th touchdown with being able to move around, I would say Pittsburgh would be the spot. But watch that. This would be crazy. He goes there, be the first time that Mike Tomlin has an under 500 record,
Oh
and
Lord,
then Mike
that would.
Tomlin gets fired. That would be
Oh
crazy.
gosh. Mhm.
But I could see that I would say
If the
Pittsburgh
if
and
the Browns
Miami.
wasn't such a yeah, I was about to say if the Browns wasn't such a dumpster fire, I said that would
I
be a
wouldn't
good
either.
destination for him too. But it's too much of a dumpster fire. Same with the Jaguars, same with the Titans. Um, to a degree, same with the Colts too. Because they really want Anthony Richardson to start. Uh, Aaron Rodgers wants to be the guy, and it would not be a good situation for him. So yeah, no, none of those teams. And like you said, Devontae Adams wants to have no parts of the Raiders again. The Broncos, they're set with Bro Nix. Of course, the Chiefs, that's a non-starter, and the same thing with the Chargers. But yeah, I would say the best spot for him would be, I think, all period would be the Steelers. That
Would be
actually
the
would be the best spot. Yeah.
NFC. I kind of agree with Dante, but because of how high up they are
Mm.
in the draft, I think they have a way to make moves to get Shadur Sanders. So I don't see that. They want something for the future and not for the now. I don't think that would be good for the Giants to do that, considering how much they invested into Daniel Jones and that backfired. So they want something for the future and not for the now. And a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be your best move to make right now. So I don't agree with that one. I think if we were to really put a finger on it, I would say Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers makes the most sense. AFC, NFC, Falcons. No, you got Penix for the future,
And
and
then
what and
there,
what
and
you
that's
invested
another
in him.
problem, right? Hmm.
You got with Chicago, you've got Caleb Williams. The Panthers are too much of a dumpster fire, even if they without Bryce Young, and they've invested in him. They've already said that he is their future after this year. You know, the only other team out of spite I could see kind of similar to Brett Favre would be the Vikings. If they can't retain Sam Darnold and they need time to bridge the gap for JJ to come back after his injury, I would say that would be a fit. And you bring in help at the wide receiver position to Justin Jefferson as well. It'd be kind of like a secondary option for him, even though they've got other pieces around like Madison as well. They can get the ball to. I really, after talking about this, I really like the Steelers. I think that that's going to be his best option out of all 31 teams that he's leaving the Jets for.
I agree. Um, and here's why I think if he were to land, if he were to stay in New York but land with the Giants, you remember the situation they had with Kurt Warner and Eli Manning.
Mm-hmm.
I see it to be that way 20 years later, where they would bring Rodgers in to school to prop up and to help along the beginnings of the NFL career of whomever they draft. More than likely will be Shooter Sanders. So it wouldn't be he would lead the Giants all the way through the season. They would probably say, okay, we'll start you, but right around week number 7, start thinking about hold the clipboard. That would basically be what would make Rodgers say, no, I don't want that.
But I mean, I just the big question mark is going to be: will Aaron Rodgers want to try to figure things out for a third different franchise within the past 2 to 3 years? I don't think he's going to want to. I mean, depending on where it's at, if it's not somewhere like Pittsburgh where he has a bona fide, really good opportunity to not only be the starter but be on a team that actually has a chance, because Pittsburgh would have had a good chance if they had good leadership and somebody that could run an offense like Aaron Rodgers could. They can audible and do the things that he can at the line of scrimmage. You know, Russell Wilson, the Legion of Boom and the defense. I mean, there's been multiple times where he's been exposed to where that it's the defense that's really carried the teams that he has had success on over the hump, and that's why we didn't see the Steelers make any big successful impact this year in 2024, and that's why they're going to have to make some moves at the quarterback position. Justin Fields, to me, is not the future right now. And you could bring somebody in like Aaron Rodgers and his buddy, who he's got chemistry with, get on the same page with Pickens, and really have a decent offense that if he's back to the form of where he was 2 years ago, of what we saw in those last few games for the next 2 years, the Steelers could be a team that the Baltimore Ravens are going to have as a thorn in their side. This could be some really good football we could see out of this division for the next 2 years if they make this move. But that's going to be something we'll have to see in the future. We'll have to see if that comes into fruition or not.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And again, yeah, I see it being Steelers too. I can't see another team that would be as good of a fit for him for what he would want to do. The defense is there. The only issue with them is running back. They need to have a stronger running game. That's the only issue they have with that team. Otherwise, he'll start right away. He will bring a number 1 wide receiver with him, and that defense actually is pretty good. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you there. Now, from a release to a possible trade, well, it looks like for the second time in 3 years, Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver / running back / all-purpose guy extraordinaire for the 49ers, he has requested that they trade him. This time, the 49ers, who weren't 2 years ago, but they are this year, they're willing to accommodate such a move. Samuel told ESPN on Sunday that the Niners granted that he and his agent Torrey Dandy permission to find a trade partner after Samuel first expressed his desire to move on at his exit meeting with Kyle Shanahan last month. Now, my question to you is: do you think Deebo being shopped? Do you think this is Deebo being shopped around, or do you think this is a teachable moment for him to learn his true value in the marketplace?
I think Deebo will be traded because, I mean, this 49ers team took a major step backwards, and they had some disgruntled players this year, and part of it had to deal with Deebo. This isn't the first time he's been vocal about wanting out of San Francisco. So if he's got a viable option and you've got a way to make him happy as well as the rest of the players around him happy, I think this is the best option. And you can get some pretty good compensation for him, and as well as draft picks or financial compensation depending on the amount of money that's owed to him. But whether it's Myles Garrett or Deebo Samuel, Washington's getting one of these big players this year, okay, in this offseason. I think that their chances of getting Garrett are a little bit better.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I think that if you send him somewhere where he can be a good secondary option, because I mean he hasn't proven that he can be a 1A right now. Send him to like the Vikings, send him somewhere to like the Dolphins, maybe the Cowboys. I really want him over there in Washington, but I don't think that they're going to get him. I don't think they're going to make big trades this offseason. They have a lot of cap room they can work with, so they're going to try to bring in free agents, work their way up in the draft, maybe make some trades up in there to where they can afford to spend more money with some higher draft picks. Who knows at this current moment, because we haven't really dived into the options at this time. We're just still digesting yesterday. I'm just being honest, okay? But in this current moment, I would say that he gets moved. I don't think they're just shopping him around for him to see his value and get him to like stop, because we've already seen what that does with Ayuk, and yes, Ayuk was retained, okay? But looking at that, I think that was too much of a headache for the organization that at this point they're not going to be playing those type of baiting games to try to retain the contract or the player. We're at a point to where they re-signed Ayuk, so they see the future more with Ayuk than him, as far as what they can build with Purdy or whoever going forward. More than likely with Purdy, because they have a pretty good connection when they are playing well. But when Debo's pouty, they're on a different level, and it's not a good one. So I think it's time that they make him happy. He goes wherever he wants, if it's in Washington or Miami or Minnesota, whoever he goes to. It's got to be for the benefit of him, to make everybody and truly happy. I do think that he gets finally moved this offseason, because this isn't the first time. Whether it was Ayuk or Debo that got retained, we were talking about that before. At some point, one of those two was going to have to go, and because of what they did with retaining Ayuk this past season, I think that it's time that Debo goes somewhere else.
I think the same. I think, and you mentioned the key name, what they did with Brandon Ayuk. He ended up re-signing with them, and unfortunately, he went for the year. A few games into securing that contract, I think they don't want to go through that headache again. And I think it's sort of to the point of, okay, if you don't really want to be with us here, I think you need to go. I think this is our time, and we need to go. Now, Dante says, look, the obvious choice is the Bengals. They can go there in exchange for T. Higgins. I'm not saying for talent that's not a problem. I'm saying for organizational fit it is, because the Bengals are traditionally cheap.
Yes.
And I know Debo wants his bag. So no. I think that will not work from that aspect. Talent-wise, yes. I think Higgins will be great out on the West Coast. And I think Samuel will provide the dynamic for the Bengals offense that I think they're missing, and that is a little bit more of a focus in the running game. So, talent-wise, it fits. Talent-wise, it fits. I know. And I know Higgins wants out because he held out because he got franchise tagged. And I think the Bengals talked him down off the ledge, so to speak. So, I'm aware of that situation. I'm just looking for the bag portion, and I think that is going to be probably the stumbling block there. But you might be right. Debo might be heading to Cincy, and T might be headed on out to the West Coast. But we shall see on that one. Now, some good news. Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Famer Randy Moss. He made an emotional return Sunday to ESPN's coverage of Super Bowl 59 on Sunday, after taking a leave from his job in December to get treatment for cancer. Now, Moss was back on Sunday NFL Countdown on ESPN before the Chiefs took on the Eagles, of course, and he was greeted with a video that included messages from Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Justin Jefferson, Kevin Garnett, and several other big names welcoming him back to the ESPN set. And it was such a touching moment that Moss himself was moved to tears by the video before actually analyzing that monstrosity of a game we saw Sunday. Now, my question to you about this is, considering that he admitted that he was undergoing chemotherapy and radiation treatment, how motivating is it to see Moss return from his treatment of cancer?
It was highly motivating. I mean, he's definitely a fighter. And the good thing with Randy is this happened, pretty early on in his retirement. He's only been out of the game like about 10, 11 years.
Right.
So this is he's still fairly young enough to fight this. So it's awesome to be able to see that he's going through that. You got to pay to play at the same time, so he's probably getting some advanced type of healthcare that I mean, not everybody wants to talk about that
Good
at the same
point.
time.
Good point.
Sometimes that depending on what your level of income, type of insurance, your healthcare provider, it will depend on what type of the treatment you get. And I'm pretty sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that he's getting the top tier options available. Not to say that it's watered down by any means, okay, but he just has the best care available. So your success rate of winning these situations is pretty high, unless it's like terminal. So
Right.
looking at this for what it is, I don't have any type of doubt in my mind that someone like Randy Moss would be able to pull this off, to be able to come back and have that type of message that he did. Looked like he was in the comfort of his own home, which is definitely also nice to see that. I'm pretty sure that the commercials and stuff that they filmed where he was a part of certain commercials that you saw during the Super Bowl, that was filmed like a while back, because a lot of this stuff that showed up during these commercials were filmed like 6, 7, 8 months ago. So, but it was good to see that the things that he had done prior to him stepping down for a bit get to air. And if he's already like this, showing his inspirational message like that, who's to say that within the next year or so we could see him make a comeback? People like Stuart Scott, even though Stuart Scott eventually fell, fatal to his sicknesses or his illness. Who's to say that Randy doesn't beat it and come back, make a comeback, and go out in his own terms at some point later on? I think that he does that. It may take a full year for him to recover, and it may be 2026 before we see him come back. But I'm willing to say that good old 81, good old 84, 18, whatever number, whatever jersey you put him in, he's going to be able to make a comeback at some point in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah. And we definitely hope you kick cancer into behind and show how much of a fighter you are, Randy. It is a great pleasure to see you on this other side, because you've been an inspiration just with your talent alone, and now you're proving you're an inspiration with your human will, which that's even more of an impact that you'll have. No question. All right. The NFL Honors was last week. And of course, it fell this way. The MVP was Josh Allen. The offensive player of the year was Saquon Barkley. Defensive player of the year was Patrick Surtain. For those that don't know, Surtain actually is a cornerback for the Broncos. Offensive rookie of the year, of course, is Drew's Commanders QB Jaden Daniels, rightfully deserved. The defensive rookie of the year was the Rams defensive lineman Jared Verse, who I think is still public enemy number one in Philly. Joe Burrow, he is the comeback player of the year. The coach of the year was the Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell, leading his team to a 14-3 record this past year. Eric Armstead, defensive lineman for the Jaguars, he's the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And the 2005 Pro Football Hall of Fame class was announced, and it was Jared Allen. Excuse me. It was Jared Allen. There we go. Sorry. Jared Allen. It was Eric Allen. It was Sterling Sharp, and it was Antonio Gates. Now, for those who don't know, Gates was tight end for the Chargers for most of his time. Sharp was wide receiver for the Packers. Allen played mostly for the Vikings as a defensive end, and Allen played mostly with the Eagles, but he also served time with the Saints and the Raiders as cornerback. Now, my question to you is, were there any surprises to you? There were award winners, and were there players that got the shaft, do you think?
Eli got the shaft, I would say, for not being a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Mm.
Because I think that they maybe a year or two late. I mean, I know they wanted to extend it because they didn't think he had the accolades to go in as a first or second ballot Hall of Famer. They made him wait like 20 some years, but Sterling Sharp should have been elected in the Hall of Fame sooner.
Years ago. Yeah.
I feel like that was. I don't want to like water down his selection because I feel like he deserves it. But I think that it should have been done a couple of years ago. They were making up for the lost one. Eli Manning is a two-time Super Bowl champion who dethroned Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II. He deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Okay. He got 2 rings over Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II. He deserves to be in the status of this button right here more than LeBron James.
Okay.
Of New York. Because Eli Manning served up a field goal in the Kick of Destiny for Kick of Destiny 3 yesterday prior to the Super Bowl. He also has 2 Super Bowl championships as dethroning Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II.
Oh my gosh. These allergies. I don't know what to make of it. Junior! 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 Oh my God. You okay? It's February and I got allergies. That sucks. Oh, good Lord. Junior! You okay? Lord. Oh, yeah, we're in the middle of the winter, but it is time to award our Snowflake of the Week. And Drew, who has earned the ignominious honor for you?
Well, for my selection of Snowflake of the Week, I had to do it again there, Cole. I had to give a selection of an honorable mention. And I had, speaking of... I had to make him part of this selection because of some news that we have during the post game to share. I had to make sure to end the streak that we ended the streak with LeBron James. Because his nickname disgraces his sport. The one and only disgraces his sport with his name.
We're talking
and most importantly, because he had his little pick'em for DraftKings. Okay, because he had the pick'em for DraftKings, he sat out Saturday's game to be in top shape to just sit down and watch the Super Bowl. This right here is someone that you call didn't even play against the Pacers. Neither him nor Luka played. It's all because the emphasis, the legendary leadership of and this is why his name of disgraces his sport. You want to sit here and call him I don't think so, bro. That's why he's my honorable mention. He didn't play in this game, but he is an honorable mention for this week's episode of Total Football Talk. But my selection for Snowflake of the Week is Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at him in the top left right there. That's what he wore to the game. It was like he was in the wrong place at the wrong time because that's how he played. That's how he played in this game with 4 catches for 39 receiving yards on 6
Lord.
targets. Even his brother's laughing at the bottom of this graphic right here. His
He
brother
added Jason in image. That's hilarious.
is laughing at him. Look at him sad. That is actually from the Super Bowl. Him sad in the left-hand corner. He's laughing at him. That's him and Tay-Tay, the leader of the Swiftie movement from the AFC Championship. And he's pointing up at himself as the snowflake of the week, looking like a Tom Selleck wannabe underneath the snowflake of the week graphic. He is absolutely cold. You would say ice cold, not on fire, because on 6 targets, he dropped 2 big ones. And I would say that DeAndre Hopkins would be another honorable mention, but King deserved to be a part of this because of his influence on the game, because of his pick'em, and he selected the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. That's why King is my selection as the honorable mention. And the Tom Selleck wannabe is the snowflake of the mother, father, and week.
Oh Lord, why did you have to find a picture of Travis Kelce looking like he's about to go to Studio 54? Oh my gosh. I don't know what was funnier, that pic, seeing Jason being happy, or you selecting LeBron James to be an honorable mention on a football program. My gosh, I can't top that if I tried. Okay. My gosh, I cannot top that if I tried. Goodness gracious. Oh well, unfortunately, I won't be able to top that. I just will go straight with the facts. And yeah, I came close. I was about to award this to the guy they call Nuck, or DeAndre Hopkins, because he had a hard time trying to actually corral catches until sometime in the fourth quarter, where he found his game and he actually ended up catching a touchdown pass. But he's not it for me. The guy that is it, though, is the Chiefs offensive coordinator, Matt Nagy. Now, I know you're all saying, wait a minute, Andy Reid is the offensive guru. That's what people were saying when Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator. True. And sort of the honorable mention would be Andy Reid, because he does have a great, bright offensive mind. But Matt Nagy gets this nod because, ladies and gentlemen, we are playing the biggest game of the year. This team needs help on defense because the offense wasn't doing jack. And how many plays did Nagy call? My wonderful partner said 49. How many of them were run plays? I can tell you how many there were. It was 4. He only called 4 running plays the entire game. Yeah, that's right. Mr. Mahomes had just as many runs. I'm sorry, 7. 7, my bad. 7 running calls. That's it, 7. 3 in the first half. Now, if you are trying to establish anything and your team normally needs to have a balance to establish itself, but you decide not to even entertain that, what makes you think that you can actually get away with only running the ball 3 times in one half and 7 times to running backs the entire game? This is a faulty game plan. Oh, that's right. I forgot. You had a head coaching stint in Chicago with the Bears. Oh, that's right. Yeah, one year people were calling you the quarterback whisperer when you were leading, of all people, Mitchell Trubisky to a division crown and a Matt Pankey kiss off the left upright and the crossbar. Yeah, in a 16 to 15 16 to 15 to the Eagles in the divisional round a few years back. That's right. And then you couldn't do anything to get close to back to that status. I should have known. Ever since your addition to this team, sir, you have set the Chiefs offense back many years. Because remember, this was an explosive team. They would take their shots down the field, and that was part of the charm of the defense, of the offense of the Chiefs. And it was also part of the headache of defensive coordinators. They're like, well, Mahomes has the ability and the talent and the thought process to take what we give him, but he also will take his shots down the field. You neutered him this past year to the point where I actually saw he was trying to take his shot downfield in the first quarter, and you chopped his balls off there. 7 running calls the entire game out of 49. Come on, man. That's unacceptable, man. That's unacceptable. You had to call off the dogs with the Eagles pass rush, and the answer would have been to run the ball more, but no, you didn't want to do that. You wanted number 15, your most prized possession on the team, you coaching the most importantly coaching the most important piece on your chessboard, and you wanted him to basically be a tackling dummy for a hit the doggone quarterback pass rushing drill. It just so happened to be that Patrick Mahomes is a live human being instead of a dummy that defensive linemen and defensive ends just hit once they actually reach their target and they make their move past the offensive lineman in front of them. You got to do better, Nagy. You got to treat Mahomes like he's precious cargo. You most certainly didn't do it Sunday. 7 runs. They should be ashamed of themselves. 7. No, never mind. Goodness gracious.
As long as it's one.
7 runs. I just don't believe. I'm sorry. Welcome to the post game, where this is when we give our normal final thoughts as to the week that was, and sometimes give you a portend of things to come. And before I continue and go completely off the rails, Drew, what is your post game?
Man, what a fun 2024 season it was. For both of our teams to make the playoffs, your team, of course, wins a playoff game, still builds a little bit on what their success was from the 2024 season. It was definitely fun to watch them at least have a chance to defend their name from the previous year, and did a decent job. I mean, of course, we would want to see more from the Texans, but they did well enough for us to still say that there's hope for them for the future, of course, to become something pretty good of a team to potentially contend for a Super Bowl. My team came out of nowhere. Came out of nowhere, plus 8 win differential from the year before, coming from a 4-13 season to 12-5. For us to be able to cover that and have 76 consecutive weeks covering football for Total Football Talk has been absolutely a blast for me. With the NFL, the UFL, the CFL, from the start of the 2023 season, we have gone all the way through from the 2023 NFL season to the UFL, because the UFL shortly after the 2023 NFL season was shortly thereafter. There was enough NFL action for us to talk for several weeks on through to where now we are at the 76th consecutive episode. And, the big thing that I wanted to cover with the post game today is just to, let you guys know, those of you who are watching this live or watching the replay, that this is, going to be the last episode for the next 6 weeks, because we're going to take a break for a little bit, because there is not as much football between now and, well, there's none between now and in the next 6 weeks, because the UFL is not starting just a couple weeks after the NFL season. It's starting like 6 weeks later. So, right. after this week's episode, we will not be back for 6 weeks. But then when we come back, we've got the UFL to talk about, and that does roll into the CFL season, and then we've got the NFL. But it's been definitely a fun past 76 consecutive weeks talking about a lot of football, a lot of NFL action, a lot of UFL and CFL action, building the little spinoff that we have, and we had too much content and not enough time to fill it out with Total Football Talk Extra. Spent a lot of good times with that, but it's time to kind of regroup, get a little bit of a breather and maybe build some more transitions, because we get to have some pretty cool things like when we click buttons like these. We can say that we are live with episode 76. And I am looking forward already to seeing it when it says episode 77. But it will be back when we are talking the UFL. We might be able to talk about Tyrone Alizé McDummy and what team he is actually playing for this season. We got other players like AJ McCarron, who may be back, may not be back. We've got other ones to talk about when we come back for episode 77, but for 76 consecutive weeks, we've done a lot of football coverage. Some things that we predicted went our way, and some things we predicted did not. If we look back to how the 2024 season started, we would not have predicted that it would have gone the way that it did, with the Commanders making it to the NFC Championship game to play against a division rival in the Eagles. Thought it would have been like Eagles and Lions. That would have been a good matchup for the NFC Championship. And I thought the Lions were deadlocked on going to the Super Bowl this year to face the Chiefs. I think regardless of who would have gone, the AFC team was losing, because the NFC is the powerhouse right now between the Lions, the Commanders, and the Eagles. It's wild. So enjoy football, the fans of those three teams that I just mentioned, for the next 3 to 5 years. You've got some great things brewing out there, just like we got some great things brewing for the Total Football Talk in the months to come. But we'll see you guys here in about 6 weeks. Just wanted to make sure that with my post-game time that I took the time to let them know what's happening out here in these streams.
All right. Well, yeah, those are great thoughts, and I want to echo those same sentiments. It's going to suck to be away, but yeah, I take pride in the fact that we've done this a year, almost a year and a half straight. Ooh, wow. I think about when we started this project in general, and when Drew and I got a chance to know one another, it was heavily apparent that we both had an intense love of football, and we both had similar ideas of wanting to actually talk about football in this vein, in this manner, and in this type of platform. Because we have that type of passion and love for the sport. And then we were blessed to actually come together, talk about it in a conversation, and say, yeah, we should do this together. And here we are a year and a half later, and we have powered through in some way, shape, form, or fashion, either the two of us, or with me on hiatus, or with Drew on hiatus. We powered through 76 episodes later, and we have a product that people actually like, and they like it because it is entertaining, it is insightful, it is informative, and it does speak to the passion of a sport that so many of us love so dearly. Which is, I think, what I can also say about the spirited conversation of Super Bowl halftime performances. Now, on Sunday, it was Kendrick Lamar's turn, and some people said that it sucked. Some people said it was wonderful. I fall straight in the middle. Yeah, it was okay. I've seen ones that were a lot worse, where I've actually just tuned out whomever was performing. But I've also seen those that were much better, that captured my interest and entertained me. But I had to learn, and I should have known this when I heard that Kendrick Lamar was actually going to be the halftime performer. he can be entertaining from a cultural and artistic standpoint. But in terms of saying, wow, I believe we are going to have one of those situations where my life is changed because of what I'm seeing on the screen or what I'm hearing, not really. So I had to understand with him, I should not attack him from an entertaining standpoint. I should attack him from a, okay, what message are you trying to deliver? And yeah, he delivered one that was related to the country, and one that was related to a guy, and one that was tied to one another. And when you think about that, it was amazing how this guy, who has had an amazing year, was not considered a superstar of any sort, would not even been considered a guy that you would want to do a big platform and have a big stage on, such as a halftime show performance. But the Sunday before, he wins 5 Grammy Awards for a diss track. Now, I never thought, being the hip hop fan that I was and am, that I never thought in the 50 years of hip hop, say 51 years of hip hop, that I would see a Grammy Award being given to a guy who wrote a diss track. But yes, we have arrived at that point. So, yes, one Sunday, 5 Grammys for that diss track. The next Sunday, the tease and the performance of one verse of said diss track, where the guy had 70,000 people scream A minor in it. Amazing. Yes, one where we saw Serena Williams crip walk and Samuel L. Jackson dress up as Uncle Sam. Yeah, there were moments to take away where it's like, yeah, it was quite entertaining. But with Kendrick Lamar, he is one where you have to listen over and over and over, or watch over and over and over, or digest over and over and over again to get everything that he is trying to throw at you. Because, like what his opponent and his rival Drake said last March, he said, "Look, come with quintuple entendres or something," as a response to me. It looks like Mr. Lamar has come up with quintuple entendres for everybody ever since then. So, yeah, in terms of the Super Bowl halftime performances, I now know that it is not going to be catered to those who are baby boomers and to those like me who are Gen Xers. I've come to that understanding years ago. It's going to be catered to a select group. Now, what's a group? That is the question, because it would have to be with those as of late, people who are hip hop fans, or the football players mostly, them, which Kendrick Lamar would be considered that, or it would be someone like a Lean Greenwood. Now, for those who may not know, he is the guy that normally sings "God Bless the USA" at just about every Trump function that you can find. But of course, that would basically peeve off just about everybody else who would not want to hear this old man sing. But it would probably make some of us very happy. Or it could be somebody like I don't know, a Morgan Wallen or a Jason Aldean. You know, one that would spark a lot of interest, especially where I live. But most people be like, who is this whack country guy, and get him off the stage as soon as possible. And then you have possibly Kiss or Rolling Stones or Ringo Starr or Paul McCartney. Yes, septuagenarians and octogenarians who would perform, and they would basically play sloppily their hits from 50 and 60 years ago, standing at midfield and not moving a muscle. Now, we'll probably recognize the hits, and the boomers would love it. But more than likely, most of us would be saying, let's get on with the second half. we have to now understand that when it comes to halftime performance, it's going to be a select group that's going to like it, and the most of us is going to poo-poo it and say, let's get on with the game. We've come to that time where it's not going to be a universal love of, oh, I love this performer. And I think the sooner we get to that point, the better we'll be. But I think we won't get to that point for a good long while. But what we can get to is a consensus that at least 120 million of us love the game that is pro football. And we definitely could come to an agreement that we love the game, we hate blowouts, and most of us can't stand whoever is going to be the Super Bowl halftime performer, even Kid Rock.
As long as it's one.
I went to go buy one yesterday, but I wasn't able to look at it tomorrow.
It's great. I love it.
Actually, I was getting two.
I hope it actually is recording.
Kid Rock.
Ah, that felt good. Well, in any thoughts of what I've actually said, sir? I didn't get a chance to have you respond.
I literally felt the weight lifted off of your shoulders as you were lifting it. It was nice as you were letting it all go on that one. That was it was great because there's been so much shade thrown at that halftime show. That I'm glad that you took the time to throw some light on it because man, it has been the talk of the social interwebs for the evening. Along with the sad Swifties, along with the fact that Trump was at the sad Swifties, the fact that Trump was at the was at the Super Bowl, and you had the Swifties and the snowflakes all around. It was great. It was great for television. And you know what? And not everybody wants to see a blowout, but when it comes to the fact that the Chiefs lost and the Swiftie snowflakes cried, I think we can also agree on the fact that that was great for television. You know it, and I know it.
Yeah.
And in all seriousness,
You like that? You like that?
you do. Because it was not a
Surprise, motherfucker.
when they lost the game. But what was a surprise was the way that they were losing when it was 34-0 at one point. So it was good to see. It was a great season. And definitely look forward to when we get to cover the next one.
Same.
We got a lot of football ahead. But just
Yes, we
because
do.
we're taking a little bit of a breather doesn't mean we don't have a lot more football to talk about. We'll
That's
see you
right.
guys here next month.
That's right. That's what we will. We will be seeing you March 24th. That will be the time we come back, March 24th. And we will we'll review what will be the free agent season that will be sparking up and quote the NFL New Year, as they call it too, with the free agent signings from all over the place. And we will preview week 1 of the UFL. But for now, if you want to reach my brother Drew, all you have to do is go onto the myriad of social media platforms he has, such as Sertop_media on Instagram, Sertop_media on X, at the _Sertopa at TikTok, and Sertopa Media on YouTube. If you want to reach out to yours truly, all you have to do is go on to flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. That is flowcode.com/page/host Cole Johnson. Well, we thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell so that you can catch any and all content that emanates from the Sertopa Media YouTube channel and or the Comey Media YouTube channel. We appreciate it, and we're going to have more programming unlike Total Football Talk on each of those channels as well between now and March 24th. That's when we will come to you next. For Drew Willingham, I am Cole Johnson, here to say in parting, as we always do, in life, just like in football, keep your head up. And remember, you always play until the whistle blows.
And as always, please, for myself, Cole, all of us together as one, stay safe out here in these streets. with this snowflake.
Okay.